No doubt about that. And Pete, we just did talk a little bit about Adrien Rabiot, but Newcastle is another club where he's been linked over and over again. Is it just too high of a wage package he's asking for, or is Newcastle not a big enough club for Adrien Rabiot?
Could be a combination of both, really. Obviously, Newcastle, no European football on offer either, which obviously Adrien Rabiot wants to be playing in Europe's premier competitions. Again, wages, we've seen the problems that Newcastle have had in this summer transfer window where there was no high profile signings, much to the sort of frustration of Eddie Howe. And we saw Paul Mitchell come out and talk about why the club won't be held to ransom by transfer targets now. They won't be paying any Newcastle tax just because they are the richest club in the world on paper. They're just saying that they won't be spending money frivolously, and it'll only be for the good of the club. And if the price is right, they'll go out and sign that player. Rabiot, again, will be a big package, even though he is on a free transfer. You're going to have a big signing on fee. It'll be a long-term contract that he'd probably be looking as well on big wages, and I don't think Newcastle right now will be willing to spend that on Rabiot. So I think, again, it looks like a non-starter for me, that one, even though I do think if they were to sign a player like Rabiot, he would be a big improvement from what Newcastle have got in midfield as well. And I think he'd be a huge lift to everybody at the club, because there has been a lot of frustration with the lack of new signings in the summer transfer window. So it maybe would ease a bit of pressure on Paul Mitchell if they were to do a deal for Rabiot, but it does seem that maybe the player himself's not that overly keen on a move to Tyneside.
For sure. And Paul, Kieran Trippier is one who was very heavily linked with a move away this summer. Did not come to fruition. Do you think he'll stay for the whole year, or you think January is a time when he'll get out and kind of rejuvenate his career elsewhere potentially?
Listen, he's at an age now and he's at a stage of his career where he's going to do what's right for him. He's not going to jump ship just for the sake of jumping ship. He was heavily linked with a move away in the summer. And I think if his game time's limited between now and the January window, there'll be other opportunities for him. But he's at a stage of his career now and in his personal life where he's got to do what's right for him and his family. He won't necessarily just move for the sake of moving, but he's a player who's going to want to play. He's going to want to play week in and week out. He's not going to be happy playing a bit part. And as we saw in the summer, there was a potential move for him, but like the Greek windows, the Turkish windows, it's just not the right fit for him. Just don't see that at all. He's a very, very good player and he's still got a lot to give. And if that's not at Newcastle, then listen, there may be injuries, there may be surprises between now and January. We might get to January and we might have started 20 games and that conversation might be completely gone. But if we're still in the same situation, I do expect him to be looking for a move in January.
For sure. And Pete, another midfield option in January is Kevin Zenon of Boca. He has a £12.7 million release clause. You think Newcastle will activate that in January? Obviously one where they don't get bent over the barrel, right? That's one where it's an actual release clause and they can go in and pay it.
Yeah, if they're seriously interested in the player, the release clause is there to be activated. 12.6 million, not a massive fee. Obviously, he's a very highly rated young player, Zenon, who's been impressing for Boca Juniors. I think he's an Argentina under-23 international as well. Left-sided, so it's not a key position for Newcastle when you've got the likes of Anthony Gordon and Harvey Barnes who can play at that position. So I don't think it's a real top priority for Newcastle right now when you've got those players ahead of him in the team. I don't see Zenon getting in ahead of either Anthony Gordon or Harvey Barnes if both of those players are fit. It's the other wing that Newcastle are looking to strengthen in. They obviously had that bid for Anthony Elanga, rejected on deadline day when they tried to sign him from Nottingham Forest, because that's the area of the team that Eddie Howe feels they need to strengthen. He wants a right-sided winger, but an inverted one, somebody left-footed. So whether he sees Zenon as maybe being an answer to that problem, we'll have to wait and see. But I think the pressure will be growing on Paul Mitchell and the recruitment team at Newcastle after sort of having a very quiet summer window. They'll be looking to strengthen in January if the right player is available, but like Paul Mitchell says, they'll only do it if it's right for the club, and I'm sure there will be a number of targets that Newcastle are looking at because they failed to bring in that right-sided centre-back after missing out on Mark Gahey, and they obviously missed out on a right-sided winger as well. So still two areas of the team that Eddie Howe would love to strengthen in, and the next possible window to do that is in January, so I'm sure the club will be definitely looking at that.
For sure. And Paul, speaking of that right-sided attacker, Newcastle are said to be interested in Adrien and Mbeumo and Antony as potential right wingers in January. Could you see either of those happening? Are those potentially good fits for Newcastle?
Mbeumo's a good player. I think he's carried the can at the start of the season since Ivan Toney's been out. Watched him a couple of times, saw him first hand at Anfield, and I thought he led the line really well. Brentford played on the counter-attack, played on that right side, cutting on the left, but also playing as a 9, and there's more to him than I thought. Watching him sporadically, but now the last couple of seasons I've watched more of him. I think he's a top player. I can see him fitting into the way that Newcastle play. I think it'd be hard to do a deal to get him out of Brentford the way that they do their business. Obviously, having just lost Ivan Toney and Thiago, the striker they brought in to replace him, out until January, can't really see Brentford be willing to do much business on Mbeumo this season. But the way that he's playing, his price tag's only going to go up. Antony, no, I don't think anybody at Newcastle would touch him. I think, listen, there's a good player there, but I think he's too lightweight for the Premier League. I think he takes too much time on the ball, and I think it's a league that is too quick for him. I think when you look at other leagues, you look at the Dutch league that he stood out in, maybe the Spanish league, La Liga or Ligue 1, maybe more suited to a player like him. But I think you look at the way that he's struggled at Manchester United. Newcastle will look at themselves on a level with Manchester United. They're competing for the same things. European football, that both want to be in the top 4. That's the type of level that they're on now. I don't think the Newcastle fans nor the Newcastle board will look at Antony and go, that's going to improve us in any way.